welcome to the Brain Crops podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea Myers, and my mission is to lift and bless 100 billion people to access their truth. And as one of our listeners reached out recently and hypothesized 100 billion, that must speak to your beliefs on time and impact and space and how all this works. And she's absolutely right. That's a great conversation for another episode. But wanted to acknowledge that comment here. And I am so pleased to have my very gracious, kind, and patient friend back with us today, Andrew Freeman. We had the pleasure of recording a podcast recently, and it was an incredible conversation. And in the process of uploading it to the cloud and getting it prepared to share with everyone, our house was hit by lightning. And so we lost all of that footage. But actually, Andrew, I remember prior to the conversation, I said, I think the podcast will just do what it's designed to do. It'll do what it's supposed to do. We'll just play in this conversation. And I guess there was something to add to that conversation. So I'm excited to hear what that is today. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Chelsea. It's so great to be back with you. And I don't know, I think maybe the forces of nature just want us to talk more often, and I'm all for that.
Me too. Very good. Very good. Well, Andrew, I have had the pleasure of getting to know you and your work, which I'm just enthralled with. But I would love if we could, before we get into all the incredible things you're doing, would you just give a little background and tell everyone kind of what you were doing up till now that kind of led you to building what you're building at Coherence Education and all the incredible things that you're creating for the next generation?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, Chelsea, because with all of our students, what I want to do is I want to find out kind of, I think everybody has two components. There's one is our unique zone of genius. No matter who we are, we've got something really special to offer. And we think it sits between our passions, our natural talents, and our values. So we work with each kid to define that. I think my natural talents are around teaching and assimilating information and figuring out how to get that out to people. So I've always loved teaching. I haven't been a professional teacher until very, very recently. And up until then, I was working in the tech industry. And so I've worked for big companies, Microsoft, Hewlett Packard, Netscape. I've worked for tons of little companies. I've started my own companies. So I've really sat in that startup space. And what what was really interesting is I had this voice of God moment my last year in college because actually really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I heard this voice say, "You're to transform education for kids." And I was like, well, I love that idea because I've taken a lot of classes. I haven't really loved sitting in the classroom. So I would love to do it a different way. One of my majors was a math major, and oh my gosh, it was just like the driest, with a few rare exceptions. The information was
Mm-hmm.
delivered in such a dry, boring way. I was like, it doesn't have to be that way. We can
Yeah.
make things like math much more exciting. So I was passionate about that. It took me a lot of decades to get to this point where I was ready to start a school. And two things happened. One is I think I just had enough life experience with startups and just understanding how businesses work and how to launch something. And then the other thing that happened was COVID. And at the time, my 10-year-old, first of all, was really complaining about public school anyway. He was in
Mm-hmm.
second grade at the time. And with COVID, it really didn't work online. So we pulled Jamie out of school. An amazing parent in Santa Cruz, California, where I was living, put together almost like this speakeasy type of school where it was secretly meeting in a yoga studio so the kids wouldn't have to wear masks and wouldn't because at the time we weren't allowed to meet in person, and if so there was all
Right.
this plexiglass and masks, and we were like, we didn't
Mm-hmm.
believe in any of that. So we put together a little school. Mostly it was parents who were teaching the classes. And so all this magic happened where um, um, Jamie's mom, we're very close still, not still married, but is a filmmaker. Actually worked in Hollywood, developed all these commercials, ran a filmmaking class, and it was incredible. The kids absolutely loved it. We had somebody else who was a writer teaching creative writing. We had somebody else who had kind of a legal background teaching debate and critical thinking. And what ended up happening was the kids were super engaged. It worked so well, and I was like, huh. I really wanted to teach a science class, and I'd been very connected with Nassim Haramein for about 10
Hmm.
years. Some of your audience may have heard of Nassim, but he has this beautiful way of teaching physics and basically the science of nature. It's very visual, it's very geometric. And I thought this is really, I think, very valuable for kids. And what's very impactful about that type of science is that it makes you see the world a little differently. So I approached Nassim. I said, hey, can I take your unified science course for adults and create a kids version? And he loved the idea. He actually hired me to do that. And we launched it. It was incredibly successful. We had hundreds of students go through the program just in the first year. And a lot of those students followed me over to Coherence Education. You know, Nassim went a different direction with promoting his paper. I wanted to teach like all the things I wished I'd learned as a kid, not just the science, but everything else: meditation, critical thinking, creative writing, you know, art, music, the types of things that are really getting kind of de-emphasized from classrooms. So I launched Coherence Education. The very first class we taught was with a company called HeartMath. It was
Hmm.
essentially meditation class for kids, and then also taught science. We've taught a lot of creativity, etc. So we're just starting year three. We've grown to the point where we're launching our first accredited program. It's so we have a full time option, or if parents want to just supplement whatever other program they're doing too. We just have some really unique, cool classes, and we call it inside out learning. What we want to take the brilliance of the kids, like I was describing, find out their genius zone, find out where their inner compass is pointing, and then we build a curriculum around that. And we do some great project based learning. We teach key life skills, basically the things that we wish we learned as kids. So that was a long description of kind of where I was and how I got to where I am now. But I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, isn't it so interesting to reflect back on that golden thread? You said you'd always wanted to teach, you liked teaching, and that's so similar to my journey as well. I had this a lot of guidance with good intention laid out for me. Here are the boxes you check, you go to the school, you get the job, you climb the ladder, those types of things. And I was along the way doing that, but found myself, it kind of didn't matter whether I was working in a big financial institution or building a program for public education or, building my own dental companies. It didn't matter what I was doing. I was still gravitating towards and finding ways to create and inspire and connect through those passions that just kept trying to say, hey, this is what you're here to do. This is what you're here to do. And I had enough clients, adult clients at that time that I was coaching, entrepreneurs, creatives, executives saying, gosh, I just wish I had access to these tools when I was a kid for me to go, okay, this all makes sense. These
Yeah.
unique passions, these interests, these desires, and now the voices that I speak to the most saying the same thing. So I love what you're doing. And some of it is so unique. In fact, are we in time? We are in time. You haven't had, it's the 21st. You're about to have a webinar, right? And
Yes.
isn't there you were telling me some really cool things, some very unique things that you're teaching your students. Would you mind touching on some of those? Because I just think they're so cool.
Right, right. Well, what I'm really inspired to do with our students is do the opposite of what most schools do. I find that most schools sort of limit what kids think is possible. They're
Hmm.
more of that materialistic approach. Like, well, if you can't see it or touch it, it doesn't exist, right?
Hmm.
So kids are trained out of their unique, you know, creativity, their connection to this idea of magic, right? And what we're learning with the telepathy tapes, with we've had Lee Holden on. We have these amazing guest instructors who come and teach our students. Lee Holden, who is famous for a lot of his Gaia programs and um, public broadcasting programs as well. He's a qigong master, but he came out with this amazing show called Superhuman Experience, where he basically went all over the world with another guy, and they found these masters who could do things beyond scientific explanation. There's one guy who could shoot electricity out of his fingers. Another guy could set newspaper on fire just with the energy from his hands, and there were all kinds
Hmm.
of healers. he showed people seeing through blindfolds. It's something you can teach kids. And anyways, it's remarkable. So the more we learn, the more I think is possible, and especially if we keep kids open to this idea that hey, there's so much possible beyond scientific
Uh-huh.
explanation, that they can enter adulthood with just this knowing, their intuition wide open, they're knowing who they are, to a much deeper level. So on September 4th, we're going to be doing a webinar called Superhuman Kids. And we're going to have Lee on there. We're going to have an animal communicator on there. We're going to have somebody else who teaches kids how to see through blindfolds. But we're going to be exploring really this unified field that we're a part of, and what happens when we're able to tap into that, because it's
Mhm.
basically full of energy, kind of like the lightning that hit your house came from that. you know
Right.
it's connected to everything. It seems to be holographically organized, so you can any information that happens anywhere in the universe we can access. I think that's what the telepathy tapes are all about. and then
Mhm.
um, and then also there's this idea that we're all connected together at a certain fundamental level. So we're going to be exploring that with kids. We're actually teaching coherence for kids again with heart math. So we're going to teach kids how to tap into that unified field. We have an animal communicator coming on. It's the second time we've taught animal communication, and the kids absolutely loved it. And just what a great way to drop into your intuition to be able to communicate with nature, not just domestic animals, but wild
Mm.
animals, trees. And we had so many amazing experiences where kids basically would communicate with a bumblebee, and I would kind of just like follow their thoughts,
Mhm.
um, various things like that. So that's what the webinar on September 4th is going to be about. Just presenting this information to parents who are interested, kids who are interested, and it'll obviously be an introduction to our classes that are coming up as well for people who want to be a part of that.
Oh, man, it is just so beautiful what you're doing because I had a near death experience when I was really young, and around that time, I remember sitting in the hospital, and I attributed it at that time as a child to being in the hospital. I just loved this feeling and this warmth and this brightness and this light that some people describe it as a learning. I would describe it more as a remembering. Um, but I had this experience, and then shortly thereafter, just started realizing that I could see things differently. Things that when I would describe, glistening or things that I was seeing, other people weren't seeing, and I, stopped telling them because it was considered weird or different. But what I love about what you're doing and what we're able to do, even here in our own home, I have one of my boys who can see energy, very similar to what I was
Wow.
experiencing, and he's learning how to manipulate that energy and work with it. And it's just so beautiful to see their creativity turn on and then watch what they do with it. Because, when in my case, for example, when you're not heard and you're not validated, and that's not really allowed or encouraged to be explored, what you do is you push it down until it becomes so
Mm.
loud that you have to re explore that and almost invite it back
Mhm.
into your life. But the question in my heart has always been, so, what if it was never quieted? How much further would it develop? What would
Yeah.
it bloom into? And it's just so incredible. So, you're teaching kids to see through blindfolds. I mean, this is just incredible. And it really speaks to we are in a society that I think a lot of us were brought up in homes that really value intellect and logic
Yeah.
and things that you
Yes.
can prove in a lab. But there are all of these other things that science is now coming to terms with and agreeing with. Either we can't explain it, but it's there, or we're starting to even be able to explain it. Maybe we don't have a term for it, but we're starting to be able to explain it better. And so I'm just so lit up about what you're doing. There's just so many cool things here. So September 4th, is that what you said?
Yeah, September 4th on Thursday, and we'll provide the information to people. But yeah, totally free. We're going to have some amazing guest speakers on there. I'm reaching out to a lot of our other friends. One of the things that's been special about our school is we've had such incredible guest teachers. We've had Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden and Lynn McTaggart and Reverend Michael Beckwith, and When we teach something, because we're at online school, we have the luxury of going out and just finding the best teacher for whatever it is that we're teaching. And
Uh-huh.
just I've been blessed to be able to, have enough connections where I'm able to reach out to people and they, reach back, and they're almost universally so excited to share their information with kids because they see exactly like what you were saying, Chelsea, is when we're adults and we're learning something that's great, but imagine learning it as a kid
Yeah.
before you know, now we have stuff to unlearn as adults. And also, kids are super learners. Their brains are literally wired for creating connections. That ends when we're about age 18. So another
Mm-hmm.
reason to teach kids these things, and that's what Dr. Edith Chan, the one we're working with to be able to help the kids see through blindfolds, she just talks about how much easier it is to teach kids. It's sort of like when the kids learn a language and they learn it without an accent, or they learn how to ski and they just look so fluid going down the hill versus an adult when they learn the same thing. So we want to, not only just teach kids earlier because it's a good thing, but it's just going to get set into them at a much deeper level just because of the way kids learn.
Yeah, and I can speak to that because when I was building a program, it was primarily for autistic children in the public education setting, and this was about a decade-long program. And you've got your speakers and your non-speakers, of course, in the autism realm. And what was interesting was the program components that we were putting in place were highly effective for the students that they were serving.
Mm.
The greater challenge I found was working with the administrators and professionals that would be working and rolling this out on a daily basis. Because
Mhm.
to your point, the students are adaptable, they're malleable, they want to learn, they're excited about learning, they don't yet have concrete um, decisions about what learning means and what it's going to be like, where adults do. And so that can be managed as well. And you and I both participate in a lot of different, groups. And you mentioned Heart Math is just incredible. So there are ways to nurture that adult learning experience. But when you have this golden opportunity with children, I'm just so excited about harnessing it for what it can be. And what's even cooler is that now you've chosen to do this at a time where you can access kids. And I know you are accessing kids all around the world. It's not like you're geographically
Yeah.
restricted.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We do literally have kids all over the world, pretty much every continent except Antarctica so far. But give us time,
Okay.
we'll get there.
Yes, yes.
Um, so
We'll
and
tag
what a
Antarctica, try and get them involved.
exactly. We'll get but it's such a great opportunity for the kids to meet someone literally who lives in New Zealand or Botswana, or we're going to have kids who are actually living in Nepal, and they could ask each other, what's
Mhm.
that like, what's the culture like, what's it like in the being in the Himalayas. And we have a we have a student who lives in remote Alaska, and one of her main jobs is taking care of their 22 dogs that she mushes like competitively on a dog sled during the winter. How cool is it for the kids to get to know her and know what that's like? So yeah, I think it's a really special aspect of our school, the global part of it.
Well, and another thing that comes to mind, my husband and I have talked about this a lot because when you're going down a consciousness path or a personal development path, or rediscovering your unique gifts and talents that may be very different than what you were brought up to think is normal or something you should talk about, it can be a little bit lonely and isolating.
Mm.
So one of the incredible benefits that I see to these types of programs is you not only have these children that are being nurtured and developed and encouraged to discover their genius, but they now know each other. And I actually think it's on purpose that we're spread out, because if we were all in one little
Mm.
island, that island would be great and it would prosper and maybe we'd get the message out. But people need to see and experience and understand what it is that you're bringing to the world. And if we're dispersed this way, yet connected, like the blindfold suggests, we're all interconnected. the reach is so much greater. And I just think that that's just such a powerful thing that you are bringing to the world. Do you have uh, an experience that you can share where either you saw one of your students' creativity or confidence or
Mm.
emotional awareness blossom because of the approach and access to opportunity they have with your school?
Oh, I have so many great stories.
I know you
Um,
do.
a couple of my favorite ones are really inspiring to me because I was a really shy kid, and I
Mm,
had a really hard time expressing myself verbally. I was just scared to talk to people, especially girls. Oh my gosh, or adults, you know. And it took me a long time to start getting through that. And what I noticed is a lot of other students I find, are at various stages of shyness or social anxiety. And what I find is when we start getting them to connect inside, for
mm,
example, in that first Coherence for Kids class that we taught with Heart Math, there was this one lovely girl who lived in the Caribbean, and you could tell she was just all heart, but she said she was just so anxious socially that she didn't have friends. She just
mm,
would basically go to a school and be completely shut down until she got back home to the safe space with her family. So by it was either week 2 or week 3, she was just sharing an update and let us know that, oh my gosh, I now that I can kind of tap in and regulate my emotions more, um, I'm able to manage my anxiety, and I have 2 new friends. And she was
mm.
just so lit up because what's more important to a kid than having friends, you know? And it's
Yeah.
absolutely most important thing. So um, that's one area that I've seen. I've also seen the kids who are well adjusted just start to take off. They're writing screenplays, they're creating businesses, they're just taking these gifts that they have, and now that they have permission to get them out and they've got the support to learn how, they're doing amazing things. We had this one 8-year old in our money mastery for kids class, where they got to speak with masters like Robert Kiyosaki, but they also all started some kind of a simple business. So this 8-year-old kid really loved to cook. So
Mhm.
he made a cookbook, put it up on Amazon, and then made a 10-week cooking class and put it up on an online education website that he was selling, right? And he did such a good job. He was just like made his grandmother film everything, and he had this little chef's hat on, and he had this whole little pitch like so all kids like to eat. Why not learn how to cook so you can eat the things that you like? And he was just like, he's
Yes.
he was 8 years old. So it's just amazing. One of our other kids has learned how to see through blindfolds already from Dr. Edith and gave everybody a demonstration and just blew everybody away. So now all the kids that talk about social proof, you know, I
Yeah.
used to see that at the park with my own kid, like go to the park and a little bit leery of the slide or the jungle gym, but then when I see other kids, they're like, oh, okay, it's okay. Imagine what happens when these kids see essentially another one of their peers just doing magical things. They'll be like, oh wow, okay, I could probably do that too. So anyway, I've got so many stories about that, but it is amazing just when we take off the fetters and just let these kids just go.
And that is just the power in it, right? Because we do the same thing. If you do something, I might be like, "Gosh, well, if Andrew can do that, maybe I can do that too." And so getting them into an environment where they are encouraged to start these businesses or try these new skills that, there's magic all around us. And we either take the time to discover what it is, we dismiss it, or we know that there's an explanation behind it, which is where you're going with all of this. There's a way, there's an access point, and we can all
Mm.
have it. I want to go back to the girl who you said made friends because I'm curious about something you said. So was her process, she identified that she had something that she wanted more social connection, and then what did
Mhm.
she do with that? Did she take it to meditation? Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah. So what she found is by by going inside and just being
Mm,
aware of what was happening, within her, and as fear came up, rather than letting the fear just basically take her over and like jump into the driver's seat of her car, she was
Mhm.
able to be like okay, I feel fear, but she was able to stay in the driver's seat, and the fear was in the passenger seat. So she still felt the
Mm.
anxiety, but she was able to work through it, is the way she described it.
Oh, man, I think that the reason that resonates with me is I've lived that in my lifetime where, for various reasons, things that I'd been through in earlier in life, I actually think a part of me, the way to describe it would be that a part of me would leave my body. And so, of course, I felt unsettled and unsafe in certain situations and circumstances because I wasn't all there. And so it was this process of learning to come back to self and be operating from that position that then you can have a passenger of fear or anxiety. You can handle that because you have the container to
Mhm.
hold it. But if you're not even there, it makes it a little bit more tricky. And I find that that's actually her experience is pretty
Mm.
common. We've almost made anxiety like this thing that we're not supposed to have, or it's, this thing that it's reasonable to shut down or dismiss our inner knowings or what we think we want to do or say because we're anxious. This is a debilitating thing when actually everybody has anxiety. We all do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's learning what container to put it in or what our unique method of coping skill or how we can be with that and make friends and approach the conversation
Yeah.
and go to the event. That's just so powerful. So thank you for bringing that up. They're all really beautiful experiences, but that one just stood out to me for some reason.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And the other thing that we do to help kids who are like Alexis or like myself, or maybe were you a little bit shy when you were growing up as well, or were you more
Oh,
outgoing?
yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
were shy
No,
as
I was
well.
definitely shy. And I was reminded why I should be along the way, or so I perceived.
Yeah. Well, another class that we're teaching in the fall, it's called Connected Communication. It's based on nonviolent communication. But we
Hmm.
taught it last year, and what I did was I was inspired by this trial attorney who's got this huge Instagram channel, and basically he breaks down conversations into these easy 3 steps. Everything's always an easy 3 steps. So I thought, I wonder
Okay.
if I could do that with NVC, because I really found like I could take a bunch of NVC classes, but it never quite sounded natural, or it's kind of like learning a new language, right? I've never quite got enough
Yeah.
practice. And so I broke everything down. Like, how do you share a feeling? How do you share a need? How do you set a boundary? How do you politely tell somebody no? How do you ask for something? How do you have a
Yeah.
difficult conversation? And we broke that all down into just 3 easy little things, and it was like magic for the kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I had that when I was a kid, because I think one of the things that stopped me was not just the anxiety, but I literally didn't know what to say. And if
Hmm.
I just remember the steps, which is like let's say I'm trying to say no, which I was really bad
Hmm.
at. Well, oh yeah, step one, thank them for the invitation. Step two, say no, and then step three, which is optional, is tell them why you're not going to. I'm like, really, is
Uh-huh.
that easy? And so as we were working with the kids, and we're even going to have a practice room where kids get to practice these conversations. I think it's going to free them up. Like, how many difficult experiences do we have with kids because we didn't know how to set a boundary, or maybe we didn't know how
Yeah.
to respect someone else's boundary, or the way we learn communication is usually it's either this kind of bickery type of thing that we see on
Hmm.
sitcoms, so common in most families, where conversation is used as a tool either to compete or position yourself rather than to connect. So
Hmm.
what I really find is that when the main objective is to connect with the other person through basically feelings and needs, all of a sudden so much of the BS around our communication just goes away. And I really am excited for kids to have much more authentic friendships, just be able to create this container for themselves so they can go through the world and have their own agency rather than being kind of blown around in the wind
Mm.
by people with strong personalities or just more of a forceful way of speaking. So, I'm really excited to help those shy kids in a lot of ways, and also the people who are on the other end of the spectrum who tend to be really dominant. They're going to change as well, and be able to listen for people's feelings and needs, and also express their own rather than using conversation as just a way of manipulating.
Yes, yes, because both what you're describing, both personality types, there's an area of opportunity for integration of some of these tools and some of these methods of connecting, where
Mm-hmm.
you have the one person who's just shuts down because that keeps you safe, and the other person who's just overbearing also has not successfully integrated some of those tools. And so this is a great bridging point, and they can actually sometimes what I see looking ahead would be that those two people that come with those different tendencies on how to handle can actually be really great collaborators in the future and
Mm-hmm.
bring a depth of understanding to the teams they may be serving. And so that's just fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Chelsea. Yeah, it's really, I think as people, there's nothing better than when we connect in a really authentic and honest way. And
Mhm.
and I think we just have so many challenges doing that unless we change our communication style from more of that
Yeah.
sitcom type of way that we can tend to talk with each other.
Yeah. So you mentioned that this year you guys are going to be accredited, which is so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, how do you see coherence education impacting the broader educational landscape?
Well, I think there's some big trends that are going on in the world right now. I think the biggest one being AI. And
Mhm.
so education in the past was outside in, where there was one system for everybody, and it got the students to adapt to it through a system of punishments and rewards, which we call grades or detention or
Mhm.
threats of expulsion or whatever. But basically, kids who are in that outside in type of education either need to adapt to that, or they're going to wash out.
Mm.
What we think is is the way to go is inside out education, where education is really customized for each kid. And it was hard to do in the past because a school could maybe hire 10 or 20 or 30 teachers, right? And maybe they had hundreds of kids. So they weren't able to really adapt education to each kid. But now we've
Right.
got we've got the kind of technology, we've got online learning tools. We can use AI to our advantage as well, because AI can teach us anything really quickly. If we can use it as a great tool. So
Mhm.
I think we're at this crossroads where all of a sudden we can do more of this inside out education that's much more empowering. The other thing is, I think we have to, because think back to when we were going through school and people were telling us like what we should study, be like, oh, you should study computer programming because there are going to be a lot of jobs there, or you should become an insurance agent and have your own insurance agency because that'll be like a great way to make sure that you have money. So we would get funneled into things that maybe we weren't even really interested in. And then
Right.
I think for most people, their midlife crisis came when all of a sudden they realized they were living someone else's genius zone or someone else's life and not their own, even if
Mhm.
even if they were being successful, right? So we don't want that for our kids. Um, what AI is going to do is it's going to force us to be at our best, because it's going to take away most of those technician jobs that were really plentiful in the past. Like you could be there were tons of insurance adjusters. There aren't going to be so many in the future because AI can do that really easily. There are tons of lawyers. That's that industry is starting to get really pressured. A lot of different kinds of medical technicians, like radiologists. We're finding that AI can analyze X-rays a lot better than people can in a
Mhm.
lot of cases. So I think just this idea of getting a job to get a job is not going to be a very good strategy. I think what we have to do is we have to be creators and innovators, and to do that, we have to be absolutely at our best. And how do we do that? Well, we start young. We find out what's special and we develop it rather than we have a special spark. Let's say someone's a great natural musician or a great natural organizer or something, but they get funneled off into something else and they don't really get to develop that. Well, if we're really looking at inside education, we're going to develop whatever is most special for these kids so they can live a great life. And AI is going to have a hard time taking that over. When we're at our human best, we're powerful leaders, we're powerful inspirers of other people, we're powerful innovators. We come up with a lot of new ideas that AI is not at this point. It still thinks inside of a box. For us,
Hmm.
we're part of the unified field, and we have a much bigger box that we have access to than AI does. So I think we have to move to this inside out type of education, and I'm really excited to hopefully we'll spark other people to start doing this as well. And of course, we're going to grow as much as we can, but there are if there are 800 billion people we're going to help change, probably
Hmm.
200 billion are kids. So
Hmm.
you know, so I'm going to need a lot of help if we're going to really empower all of those kids.
I'm so excited to see you do it, and it'll be so neat along the way, as they develop and grow. You used to think in fact, my mind was gonna go, 20 or 30 years from now, they're not gonna be 20 or 30 years from now. 5 years from now, they're gonna be doing what they're gonna be doing because they're not gonna be stunted by these, these mistaken beliefs that they need to check all the boxes, right? And so it's gonna be
Right.
really neat to see what your community of kids ends up creating and bringing to this world. And I'm just so excited to be along for the ride. I want to watch and see. And um, you're talking also about you're talking a lot about creativity and imagination and consciousness. And I'm curious to know, even just for parents at home, because your school serves a number of populations and schedule styles. And so surely there are things that we can be doing at home, whether our kids are
Hmm.
full time participating, whether they're just participating in a class here and there. What can we be doing to bring more of the consciousness practices to our learning and parenting at home? What would you say is a simple first step
Mm.
there?
Well, I think we need to really address all of the main aspects of kids. And so the framework that we came up with at Coherence Education we call SPARK, SPARK with a
Hmm.
C. So S is
Hmm.
for spiritual connection. We really believe that if you ignore that, you ignore the opportunity to connect into this big field that's full of ideas and full of creativity. And also it just feels great to be there. Like we all know that when we have a great meditation session, we're like, oh my gosh, there's so much out there, right? So spiritual connection, I think most people are really missing that. And so I would say introduce that at home in some sort of a way. The P in Spark is for project based learning, with the whole idea that kids learn by doing. But
Hmm.
there are a lot of project-based learning schools that I've seen where they give kids a project, whether the kids like that project or not, and they tell them to do it.
Mm.
It becomes just another outside-in type of way to learn. So that's why we focus on discovering each child's genius zone, and then out of that, the types of projects that they do, they're super excited to do. So
Hmm.
when a kid is like completely immersed in a project like that, they learn so much. So we really believe project-based learning. A is for arts. So every kid is an artist, whether it's visual art or it's music or um, it's creating a business or that sort of thing. So we really focus on art, a lot of creative writing, a lot of filmmaking, and then R is for relationships. So
Hmm.
connected communication, understanding themselves as well, how to be their own best friend. Because if we don't have that good relationship with ourselves, it's hard to have it with other people. So really focusing on those relationship skills mostly starts with communication, and then C is for community. So getting involved with community is so helpful to all of us. They've done so many studies that people who are depressed or feel really disconnected or hopeless, as soon as they start doing a community project and volunteer for something, all of a sudden they feel so much better. And also,
Yes.
since we're creating such amazing lights, let's share that light, with other people. Um, so for families who are doing it themselves, like, hats off to you. That's fantastic. Just see what parts of Spark are are really available in your house, and what parts may you want to emphasize a little bit more.
That's so perfect and so beautiful. What stood out to me the most in what you were just saying was the relationship with self, because I feel like all of those other pieces connect so deeply to that. When you acknowledge, make space for, and truly allow yourself to love all the parts, not just the ones that are comfortable or that get you pats on the back, but all of the parts.
Mhm.
And, I've had the opportunity to sit in on some of your classes and see the way that you interact with your students. They really do love and trust you. And the dialogue isn't just raise your hand and get, your gold star. There's an actual conversation that takes place. And one of the things that I noticed in one of the courses was the feedback given was it was really rich feedback, because you've cultivated an environment where your students can hear the parts that are really, really working well for them, as well as some ideas or opportunities to explore other things they may not have. And it's all welcome and open and received in a way that feels safe. And so
Mhm.
kudos to you for doing such a beautiful job with that, and making that relationship component so important in what you're developing for the world.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. We took a page out of comedy improv, the way we teach. But
Okay.
do you
I
know
wasn't
the
expecting that.
do you know the one rule for comedy improv that,
What is
that if
it?
you take a class? It's yes and. So
Okay.
it's not no but. And you might notice that if you're talking with somebody and they're kind of a no but person, it's just hard for the conversation to flow, right? And it's hard for them
Uh-huh.
to open up, because if I'm just telling you no but, you're not going to want to keep sharing. So we do that with the kids. We take what they offer, because it usually comes from a brilliant place, and so we'll hear that and say yes, and what else, or and what if we did this other idea too, and it just creates all this expansion. So that's how we really like to run our interactions with our students.
Well, you're doing a great job. Okay, I have one more question for you. If you were to finish this sentence, I'm curious what you'd come up with. Conscious education is.
Hmm. I would say conscious education is.
Okay, that's profound.
It really is. It's just looking at what is true, like what is true for each kid, what is true for their direction, where we all are very subjective beings for good reason. That's why we're all different. We weren't cut from the same mold, right? So if we're educating consciously, then we're really looking at what is for each kid, and then building around that and expanding that is for them. No,
That's
maybe
that
not what
and
you're
that's what
expecting.
that's magical. Yeah. Curveball there. But that's actually a very magical answer, because then we get to see what all of these beautiful orbs collect into and what it creates in this
Hmm.
massive change that I think we're all becoming aware that we're a part of. And so that's really, really neat. Andrew,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Is there anything that I have not asked you that you want to make a part of this conversation that will get uploaded before it disappears?
Yeah. Well, I want to learn from you. You have this really unique, beautiful, innovative way of connecting with kids called meditation. And I,
Mhm.
I would sure love to learn how to integrate that into what we're doing at school, because I think kids would absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So meditation came to me in the shower one day. I get some of my best ideas there, but I had been in about a week and a half long inquiry, just saying, you know my gifts and talents. What do I do with them? And the answer just came so clear right through me. It's exactly what you're doing, but share it. And so we have elected to homeschool our youngest three, who are now 6, 7, and 8. And one of the things that we do each day is I get out the freeze dried fruits and organic herbal tea ingredients, and they blend their own tea. And while they're blending the tea, we either watch the colors bleed into the water. We send intentions to our water. We talk about water intelligence. They're learning breath work and different meditations. We do quiet activities, usually just with sunlight. I try not to have overhead lights on, just a very
Mm.
natural, beautiful experience. And um, this has been a way that they have developed that connection with themselves as they go, I wonder what it would be like to put a little bit of raspberry with a little bit of chamomile. And they're creating that artistic side, but also
Mm.
connecting. So rather than just consuming the food, consuming the water for their own nourishment, they're connecting with it and they're creating with it. And I'm teaching them. So my whole life, I've learned that one of the ways that I connect with the world is the food speaks to me. So sometimes I'll just stand there, with my arms open, my hands open, and I'll just know what to do. And so consequently, if my husband's like, "Hey, this was great. What was it?" I don't know, and I probably won't make it just like that again. But the food speaks to me, so I'm teaching them that. And so this is a really beautiful way to get to know all of the abundant, herbs and flowers and fruits and ways that we can spices, ways that we can um, connect and have that beautiful moment to connect with ourself, with spirit, source, God, whatever the understanding is. And I'm also a fan of blockchain. And so through this process, we decided, how can we bring this aspect to children? And so through the meditation app, kids can NFT their tea blends should they choose to and want
Wow.
to, all while accessing, history of tea or meditative experiences, breath work. And so it's just a very neat combination of the things that we were doing at home that were being well received with our kids. So we started piloting it with different groups of kids, and some of it worked well and some of it we're like, okay, we got to go back and tweak that. I'm sure, that's par for the course, but it's blossomed into something really beautiful that just never feels like work. It feels like creation, and I love it. I'm so excited about it.
Mm. Wow. One thing that struck me, Chelsea, is as you were describing all the different aspects of meditation, is it's
Mhm.
the it's the first thing where it's like one thing that encompasses the whole Spark learning framework that we have, because there's spiritual connection, there's project-based learning, right? Because
Mhm.
they're building tea, they're blending tea. It's an art, it's relationship building, and it's community building as well. So I love that. I can't think of anything else that we've done that incorporates all five of those aspects.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, well, I would love to share. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, as I was, as we've been doing this, and our kids are on a youth board, they're official tea testers. And they,
Wow.
one of them, he loves the tea, but he's really a savory guy. And so he's like, could I start a spices business? And he's got the name for it. And he gets out different spices and mixes them together and tries them out. And so it's, by us just leaning into what felt like our natural next step that we were guided to do, we're impacting his ability to say, hey, what would my next step be? What is my interest? And so it's really, really neat. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing. Would love to would love to figure out how to work with you to incorporate that into our school. It's really
Oh, we'd love
beautiful.
it. Thank you.
And one of our main goals is to bring families closer together as well. So,
Mm.
you know, so we have at least one family workshop a month where it's a communication workshop, or it's a understanding your different dosha types for
Mm-hmm.
Ayurveda, or and how that can help you understand each other and understand your different needs. So it would be really really fun to introduce this as a ritual for families to start doing, because I think there's too few opportunities for families to really really create and come together in a way that that you provide through meditation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'd be honored to participate. And it's such a beautiful thing because it's a global impact that we intend to have, and whether you have access to water and cinnamon, you can make a beautiful infusion that way, or you have an entire garden that you want to make very robust recipes. It's available to all, and we have a ton of free
Mm.
resources. And so, yeah, I would love to share. I'd be happy to and honored to.
Mm.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, let's keep in touch, Chelsea.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
Well,
if we're really
thank
if we're really
you.
lucky, there'll be some kind of a natural disaster that makes us get together again and have another conversation.
Oh gosh, well let's not make that the qualifier. You have my number. Let's just talk. But this
Okay,
has
let's
been a
do it
lot
that
of
way.
fun, Andrew, and thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation and sharing your beautiful work with the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. It's such a delight to talk with you. Thank you.
You as well. I appreciate you joining me for today's episode. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit dentallife.coach for access to additional coaching tools, as well as more episodes to help you create the life you truly desire.